Welcome back, history lovers. Welcome to the Adventure Box podcast, the podcast where we bring history's most pivotal moments to life. Today, we're traveling back to the final days of the American Civil War, when three things happened. 1. Richmond fell. 2. General Lee retreated, ran away. And 3. The nation took its final breath towards healing. That's right, final steps towards getting out of this war. So we'll explore the military tactics, the personal struggles, and profound consequences of these final moments. So let's begin with the fall of Richmond. Now, Grant's relentless pressure, that's what we're going to be talking about right now. Okay, so by early 1865, the Confederate capital of Richmond, Virginia, was a city on the edge. For nearly a year, Union General Ulysses S. Grant had kept constant pressure on the Confederate forces, especially around the strategic cities such as like Petersburg, just 20 miles south of Richmond. Yeah, that's right, south of Richmond. So that's pretty interesting. If Petersburg was south of Richmond and the Union was attacking Richmond, why not go up into the north towards the north and take Richmond out? Well, because of this, these few months of being attacked, Grant used trench warfare and siege tactics to basically weaken that area, weaken Petersburg. They stretched the Confederate lines thinner and thinner and thinner, basically making it so they had to defend on multiple angles, multiple positions around the city. Meanwhile, Robert E. Lee, his army was running low on men, food, and morale. Desertions increased. People they did not want to be around. The supplies also dwindled. Still, Lee held on, hoping to outlast the Union. Or, this was very important, he was hoping for, receiving reinforcements from somewhere else. Now the problem is, where was he going to get it from? Was it from Richmond? Was it from down south? He didn't know. But as far as he was hoping that reinforcements are on their way. Then came April 2nd, 1865. Grant's forces broke through the lines at Petersburg. The writing was on the wall at that moment. The Confederate President Jefferson Davis fled that city. That's right, Jefferson Davis was at that city that night, and by the next morning, he was gone. Union troops began to enter Richmond. Fires started, some accidental, others set by retreating Confederates trying to burn the city down as they left, so as to leaving the Union with nothing in return. They couldn't get food from there, they couldn't get supplies from there, destroyed all. And they couldn't set up camp. They couldn't take the capital. So citizens emerged cautiously, unsure what the Union occupation would bring. To many, the fall of Richmond marked the symbolic end to the Confederacy. It was done. The capital was done. But remember, what's interesting is 1812. You remember when we was talking about the War of 1812? When the British burned D.C., the White House, the Capitol, and a lot of other federal buildings, we still came back. But to many in the Confederacy, when they fell, it fell. And it was done. It was the capital, the heart. And its loss was basically a crushing blow on those people. So this is why they thought it's the end. And at that point, it wasn't just the citizens that thought it was the end. You had Lee's final retreat. With Richmond and Petersburg lost, General Robert E. Lee began to desperately retreat westward. So he's going closer inward into land, away from the coast, because the coast was basically taken over already. His goal was reaching the remaining Confederate forces in North Carolina. Now that's south, dude. Don't go west, go south. But he was actually also looking for the supplies that were supposed to be in Lynchburg. But Grant wasn't about to let him go. Union forces pursued Lee relentlessly. Skirmishes broke out along the retreating path at, there's one place that's really interesting. You got to read the story that's in the text. There was a guy who was at the place where the war broke out, and then he ended up at the place where the war ended. He was in both places, and he was not a soldier. He was just a normal citizen. You got to read his story. It's in the textbook. Okay, so this is called the Amelia Courthouse. That's right. I think it was in Sailor's Creek and other places around there, other locations around that area. But it's Sailor's Creek. Actually, let's do this. I got a map for you. You know how I love bringing out maps. Let's type in Sailor's Creek. Okay, so in here, Sailors, not sailors, but sailors like that, Creek, Virginia. Here we go. Here we go. Watch out. Watch out. Here we, oh, they didn't zoom in. Darn. Okay, let me zoom out a little bit so you know exactly, where Sailor's Creek is. So this is Virginia, and it's smack dab in the middle. As you can see, Richmond's right there. Lynchburg's over here. This is where the supplies are supposed to be. That's why he was running west. And then from west, he was going to go south into North Carolina. But in Sailor's Creek, that's the most important part. It's like Amelia Courthouse, very famous place. Sailor's Creek, also, it's all the same area. At Sailor's Creek, on April 6th, Lee lost over 8,000 men, many taken prisoner. He was not all killed. He is reported to have cried out, "My God, has the army dissolved?" Yes, yes it had. Lee's men were exhausted. They were starving and they were demoralized, which means they had no more morale. They were not happy about what was going on. They were sad, they were depressed, they had anxiety, all these things. Probably a bunch of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Basically, it means you're feeling the stress of the things you've already experienced. Many marched barefoot as well. Their supplies were delayed or captured, and by April 8th, that's what it was, the Union cavalry had moved ahead of Lee and blocked off, basically, again, the way to Lynchburg. Okay, and the path was near a small village called the Appomattox Courthouse. That was the one. It wasn't the Amelia Courthouse. We're going to be talking about the Appomattox Courthouse. Appomattox. Man, I got to look this one up. Give me 1 second. I'm going to look this up. I'll get right back to you. Sorry about that. Appomattox. So I'm not that literate. I have some issues with my reading sometimes. So, okay. But Lee knew it was over at this point. Now, at the courthouse was the surrender. On April 9th, 1865, Palm Sunday, actually, this is interesting. It was actually on Palm Sunday, Lee requested a meeting with Grant. The two generals met together in a home of Wilmer McLean, whose family, interestingly enough, had lived near Manassas, where the war had begun. Okay, I wasn't going to tell you that. I was going to make you read about it, but read about his story. It is so fascinating. So that's Wilmer McLean. You got to read about it. And this was nearly 4 years earlier. He was there when it began, and he was there when it ended. So, and it all happened inside his house, or inside the city that he lived in. So inside his parlor, history was made. Grant arrived in a dusty private's coat. It was very humble of him, while Lee wore the finest uniform. It's funny, so Grant was the winner, but he came in a dusty private's coat, and Lee, who had lost, was in his finest uniform. He was like ready to surrender properly. But the contrast spoke volumes. But what happened next would define American honor. Grant offered generous terms. The Confederate soldiers would lay down their weapons, but they would be able to return home, not prisoners. They were going to go home. Officers could keep their sidearms, and importantly, any soldier with a horse could take it with them and help in the spring planting. Now that, I gotta tell you, was very generous of Grant. Usually they would not do that. They take all your weapons, they take your horses, and make you walk barefoot all the way home. And if you were using your horse, you wouldn't have a horse to help you with planting. So Grant, his great desire was to bring people back together. So there was no triumphalism. Basically, when I say, I'm the victor, I'm the winner, I'm gonna gloat about everything. No. There was no parading of prisoners, only solemn handshakes and a hope for peace. When Lee left the house and mounted his horse, the Union troops began to cheer. Now that is consideration for the person that might have lost. Grant ordered them to stop. The war was over. Now, I think I took this the wrong way. The Union troops began to cheer that they had won. Lee, actually, they were basically touting, you lost. And it was Grant that ordered them to stop. But here's the interesting thing. This is the part that I was thinking I was talking about. It was just a few moments later that one of the officials on the Union side actually saluted all of the Confederates that were now leaving. The war was over, he said. The rebels are our countrymen again. That's what Grant had said when he stopped them. And then when the other general saluted them, that's what the honor was. That's the moment that was so great. Well, little side story. You'll read this in the text. But at the time that they left the house of McLean, a lot of the Union soldiers actually took parts of the house with them. Why did they do that? Because they wanted a memorabilia for the end of the war. So the war wasn't completely over, though, just so you know. Some Confederate forces remained in the field, but Appomattox, yeah, this is horrible. I cannot say that word. Appomattox, that's right. Okay, Appomattox Courthouse marked the beginning of the end. For Confederate soldiers, the surrender meant a return to a devastated home. It was ruined crops. It was uncertain futures. Remember, there was the march that they made. They came through from Atlanta, Georgia, out to the coast to Savannah, burning and destroying everything to break the morale of the Confederates so they wouldn't fight anymore. So those Confederate soldiers were going back to their home that had just been destroyed. So Marshall's March was not a good stand. Plus, a lot of other places that had the war going on, those crops were destroyed. Plus, the men were fighting. They didn't have time to go and plant the crops. The Confederates were defeated, but they were not treated as enemies anymore. For Union soldiers, it was the fulfillment of years of sacrifice, but also the burden of rebuilding. They knew that they would have to help to rebuild. What about civilians? Especially in the South, facing the hardship of winter coming on, slavery had ended. No more slaves. The economy was shattered, and the wounds ran deep. But there was also relief. Relief that the killing had stopped, that brothers could return home, that a new chapter would begin. This is why it was so important what happened at Appomattox. Now, why does it still matter? Why? Why should we remember Appomattox? Why does the fall of Richmond still echo today? Because it shows the power of perseverance. Grant's strategy wasn't flashy. It wasn't steady. It was relentless, and it was grounded in purpose. Because it showed that even in defeat, dignity mattered. Lee's quiet strength and Grant's mercy became a model for how enemies could become countrymen again in a civil war. Now, it's a little bit different if you're in two different countries fighting with each other, but there can still be civility It means you do not have to kill, destroy, and other things. And because the end of the Civil War was not just a military conclusion, it was the dawn of a new America. It's still it's I was going to say haunted, but yeah, I'm still going to use that word. One still haunted by old injustices. One still strives to live up to its promise, but one that could begin again. That is a civil war. What is a civil war? It's when two sides in the same country attack each other. Sometimes you see it all the time in politics today. Why are we allowing those people to, those fights, those conflicts to happen? We should be making friends with our enemies. We should be working together, coming to a common cause. Now, there's going to be things we do not agree with. That's understandable. But we can still be civil in the way that we treat others, right? So this is a great moment in American history where we actually show you might be enemies 10 minutes ago, but you need to overcome that and become friends, work together, and do things that will help bring America back together again. This is why it's so important to remember the fall of Richmond, the fall of Petersburg, the end of the war. Why? Because we ended the hatred of the North and the South. Now, there was still hatred afterwards. You don't just fix things overnight. But it started the beginning of this new end. It started the beginning of a stronger America together instead of being separate. So the next time you see someone being picked on in the school grounds, the next time you see someone being picked out in the park, the next time you see someone being picked on unjustly, or even justly to some extent, there has to be civility in those interactions. That's what I said. Okay, so let's recap this very quickly. So, the Union goes down into the Petersburg area, down here, right here. And they attack with trench warfare and other strategic tactics, and they win Petersburg. Then they go up to Richmond. Well, at the time that Richmond is lost, you had Jefferson Davis, which there's a really interesting story, and I'm not going to tell you all about it. I'll just tell you one thing. In the textbook, you're going to find out about the Confederate gold. We're going to have you go through history and try to find that gold. Yeah, that's right. So it's a big mystery even today, but we're going to give you the information that we know and see what you can come up with. So go through the text or read something about it online, whatever, and put it in the comments below. That's your action item for today. I want you to put the comments in the comment section below because I want to hear what you have to think, or send me an email. Love to hear it. I want to hear what you guys think about this. What happened to the Confederate gold? There was a lot of it, millions of it. What happened to it? My own theory, and you're going to find out more when it comes to the story. Before going through the activity that I'm going to have you go through, I swore that they basically just started handing it out to all the Confederates, saying, here, take some gold with you, and prosper. Problem is, couldn't find that gold afterwards. So if everyone had it, they couldn't find it. I don't know what happened to it. So, going back to the recap. So, Richmond, guess who was in there? It's the capital. So, of course, Jefferson Davis, the president of the Confederates, he took off. He ran away. And also, Lee went on his retreat westward. He came out to Sailor's Creek, on his way over to Lynchburg, where he thought his supplies were, because he wasn't going to give up. But Grant, he knew where he was going. Grant sent troops to attack, and basically 8,000 soldiers, Confederate soldiers, were either killed or imprisoned. Most of them imprisoned, which is great because they didn't die. Because again, Grant did not want his fellow citizens, citizens of the United States, both of them, to die. He just wanted to end the war started by the Confederates. So, all that recapped, this is why it's so important to bring civility even when there's anger, even when there's hatred, even when there's an enemy. You do not have to treat them like an enemy, because you do not. Here's an interesting thing. As people, we do not change people by being mad at them, by attacking them, by insulting or criticizing them. No. We make differences in their lives and help them change their ways when we actually talk with them, when we actually work with them. So, with that being said, thank you for joining us on this Adventure Box podcast. Next time, we will go through one of the hardest moments in this whole thing of the Civil War. One of the hardest one, and what's that? The assassination of a great president. We will go through that, and we will start talking about the Reconstruction, though that is a unit on itself. That's a whole month worth of information you're not going to want to miss, because we're talking about the Ku Klux Klan and how that started up. We're talking about political destruction that was being made, and we're also talking about some of the great things, including Hiram Rhodes Revels. You heard of him. He was the first African American senator. Wait a second. What? During the Reconstruction? Yeah. And guess where he's from? Mississippi. That's right. When you think racist, like what would be racist back in the South during the time of the Civil War, you probably think of Mississippi. I don't know. I'm just saying that. That's a stereotype, and it's not true, because they were the ones that voted the first black senator. Not even the North. It was down in the South. So how interesting is that? But we will talk about the next time. That will be on Wednesday. And as of Wednesday, we are done with the Civil War. We're actually taking a break from this podcast for just a little bit over the summer. But then we've got we got a lot coming up. We have the Industrial Revolution. We have the Reconstruction. We have the World War I, World War II. We got all these things coming up. We're only doing a half year this time, because one, it totally killed me, totally killed business, not in the sense of not being successful, but we were overworked, and now we're going to try to relax a little bit. But you'll get more of this podcast after the summer, and we will actually make this available on our website, so you can actually see it, all the podcasts as they go through chronologically. So enjoy, have fun. Please let me know what you think. We will talk to you soon. Take care and have a great day. Adios, muchacho. If you have any comments or questions, add them to the comments below. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow, actually. Take care. Bye.